Former President Muhammadu Buhari has now been laid to rest in his hometown of Daura, Katsina State, moments ago, in a state burial attended by his successor, President Bola Tinubu, and other top-serving and former leaders. And Nigerians from all classes reviewed the legacy of Muhammadu Buhari, including thought leaders across sectors. Hello and welcome to Politics Today, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzama, sitting in for Sheon Kimbale. If you've been watching the station, he's been on air since about 11 a.m. and had to take a break. And today, the nation, as far as we're concerned, is in mourning. It's a somber reflection of the time and life of former President Muhammadu Buhari, who has now been laid to rest in his hometown of Daura. Received by Mr. President himself, President Bola Tinubu, at the Katsina airport earlier today. The former president, had died about 48 hours ago in a London clinic, and the vice president was dispatched to go to London and ensure his body's return to Nigeria. That was done yesterday, and the body left London to Nigeria today, where he's been buried according to Islamic rites. And the long line of dignitaries, including family members, the president, his former vice president, Yemi Osinbajo, who served with him for 8 years, close associate political leaders across political parties. Today was a day to put all of that aside and give the soldier, the president, the leader, the respect, his last respect, as he was officially laid to rest. The national flag also handed over to the family after all of. So you're seeing pictures earlier today of where he was laid to rest. Muhammadu Buhari, 1942 to 2025, he served the Nigerian state for many years, since he was in his 20s as a soldier, and as at that time occupied national position as a military man. He was at some point the head of state of Nigeria in 1983 and was later removed in 85. But in 2015, Muhammadu Buhari became the first president in the Fourth Republic to defeat an incumbent, and he served for 8 years. Well, he took ill, and we understand he was at the ICU, but unfortunately, he couldn't make it out, and now he's been officially laid to rest. All right, so the nation is in mourning. 7 days has been declared by the federal government as days of mourning for the former president, Muhammadu Buhari. As a matter of fact, today was declared a public holiday to reflect the somber moment of our nation as we lost the former president. But people have been talking about how he lived. It's a mixed bag of reaction to the legacy of a man that was seen to be a man of integrity, frugal, disciplined, and all of that. But let's take a listen to some of the persons who have spoken about their understanding of the person or the president called Muhammadu Buhari. Let's begin with the man who was with him for 8 years, the spokesman, Femi Adesina, who said earlier today that Muhammadu Buhari was not just his boss, but he was his friend. Let's take a listen to him.
He was just a simple person, very, very simple, straight, honest, accountable, disciplined. Disciplined. I've never seen a man more disciplined than President Muhammadu Buhari. And this one, it is that attracted me to him. He always had his medicals in London, even when he was not in office. So it was not about the time he was president alone. He had always had it in London. And then you have to be alive first to get certain things changed or corrected in your country. If he had said, I'll do my medicals in Nigeria just as a show-off or something, he could have long been dead, because there may not be the expertise needed in the country. But he needed to be alive to be able to lead the country to a point where we will have that expertise. So,
all right, Femi Adesina, talking about the kind of person he understood the man Muhammadu Buhari to be, as well as the reasons why he had to take his medicals abroad, because when that question was asked, those were his responses. Let's also tell you that the life member of the PDP Board of Trustee, Chief Body George, also gave his reaction as to the person of Muhammadu Buhari.
He bought a modern equipment for our electoral process. That no matter how you write the history of this country, his name will remain golden in that line. But what did we do with it again? We messed it up. On the D-Day, the 8th hour, he had a glitch. And in memory of Oga, he must have thought, look, that would have helped the electoral process and removed the shenanigan that we've been going through for years. That we will not forget. We will miss him.
Yeah.
He always calls me a rascal, but we will miss him.
Yeah, Muhammadu Buhari and Chief Body George were not in the same political party, but something he said about Muhammadu Buhari, at least he midwifed the entire 2022 electoral act that led us to have that election. And he's saying that the only thing that can be done in his memory is to make sure it is built upon that legacy of the electoral act. Professor Patutomi also gave his own reaction to the president, the former president, who is now buried.
We have just a number of things. First and foremost, as many people have said, he wasn't a hands-on kind of a manager. And then he had a disposition, which was if he trusted you, if he liked you, you could never do wrong. If he did not like you or did not trust you, you could never do right. That was his disposition as a person. And so when he appointed people, they all ran off in different directions, and so there was no cohesion in policy. Now, one of the sad things about his watch was that we did not have an effective grip on fiscal policy, on the fiscal side. The monetary side then thought it was their responsibility to run the economy. This is what the policies did on his watch that took things south, very far south. Okay. Before you knew it, we had returned to the poverty capital of the, we had become the poverty capital of the world.
So that's Professor Patutomi, political economist, talking about whether or not this is tendency, the former president's tendency of delegating and believing you could get the job done, whether or not that was his weakness or his Achilles heel, is a subject of debate, because people that were close to him, that it wasn't hands-on. It gives you a responsibility, perhaps from his background as a soldier, because as a soldier you obey the last command. So he gives you that responsibility, expects you to carry it out. But this was a man dealing with civilians, a different kettle of fish altogether. So that was the perspective of Professor Patutomi. Ismail Ahmed, who was the APC national youth leader, as well as served as a special assistant to the former president and even serving in this government, executive chairman of the PNG initiative, also gave his remark as one of the young persons that know Buhari pretty well.
In a country where it is rare to find someone who has overcome, who God has helped to overcome the basic desires and wants of materialism and excessive wealth accumulation. He has overcome that from a pretty early age, I think. And since his military days through to his sojourn in politics, President Muhammadu Buhari has been known for that by his colleagues and his friends, his family, and later the general public. And I think that has been his most important trait, and I think it helped him when he was governing both as a military ruler and as a civilian president. And we've seen that up close and personal when we worked with him. He never engaged in anything that has to do with materialism or personal interest of any kind. He was a simple person who just wanted to give back to a country that gave him so much.
The UN Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, who served as a federal minister at some point in the country, also gave a view on what the legacy of Muhammadu Buhari means.
I think that what we did in Buhari's time was to set an agenda that really did Nigeria first a long time ago, and to be very clear about our vision, to be clear that this is about building our nations and the interests of our people, but acknowledging that this is in a global context. And I think what you will see is the coming together today of Nigerians for Nigeria, whether they're in the country or they're outside of the country. And kudos to the many colleagues that I have outside in the diaspora who are doing incredibly well, whether in the UN, you mentioned earlier our former Minister of Finance, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, as the WTO head, but there are many more in businesses. There are many more in diaspora. There are incredible Nigerians who, young Nigerians who have come into the tech space. And so I think what we have shown is that we have the ability to bring everyone home and to do this better. And those foundations really have been laid over time. But in Buhari's time, I think, you really did see everyone rolling up their sleeves and trying to do something in an incredibly difficult context. You remember when we first came in, the security situation in the country was quite incredible. We had parts of our country taken over, as did Mali a few months ago, and reclaim that. Yes, we have not resolved the problem of security yet, but the efforts that continue to be made don't slide. So on very many different levels, the connection with the global, with the regional as well, the African Union. Of course, we've had our challenges with ECOWAS, but I think it's a sign of the times. And if I was to say anything, we are losing leaders who have convictions, who have a set of values that they hold on to very tightly. And we need them, because when we see the situation in Gaza, when we see the situation in Sudan, when we see the situation in Ukraine, where agreements to hold together the world with a set of values and principles are being eroded, I think that we should remember in late President Muhammadu Buhari when he stood for that, and we continue to support.
All right, let me bring in our guest who will be espousing some of the conversation around his legacy as well as the state of our nation. It's a two-part conversation. Let's bring in Dachong Bagos, a former federal lawmaker. He served in the House of Representatives in the 9th Assembly. So Dachong, thank you so much for coming on the program, as well as Salihu Lukman is a former National Vice Chairman Northwest of the APC, now a member of the coalition, the ADC. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the program. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geoffrey. Even in Nigeria.
Let me start with you, Mr. Dachong. It's a time to reflect. Some have said a lot of things. We've had conversations. Some have said the man was a contradiction. Others have said it was a missed potential, missed opportunity. Others have highlighted his principle and his integrity. Others said controversial things about him. Young people have their own perspective about him. So there is the man, Muhammadu Buhari, and there is the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If you were to unpack those two, what will you say as a beginner in looking back at the life of Buhari?
Yeah, well, the man, President Buhari, has been recognized as a man of integrity and truth. So even in death, he will want us to say the truth with integrity, because that's how he has been recognized and known for. And so the truth of it, as a young man, being in politics, being in the National Assembly, and coming from a state that has been bedeviled by insecurity, definitely saying the truth to power as it was and as it still stands, that the issue of insecurity was one of the issues that really bedeviled his administration as a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But as an individual, we know that everyone wants to do and try his best as it may be. But knowing very well that what has happened in the past few years during his administration, we had our own pound of flesh in terms of insecurity on the plateau that it wasn't, and even in Nigeria that it wasn't, that even today 27 people were killed in Riom local government, and the deaths were still counting. So these are issues that if truly we want to recognize him as a man of truth, we should be able to say the truth, which he will know that if he has done his best, but then it wasn't good enough. And looking at the issue of the economy as well, as a young man, I know that how young people in Nigeria are faring in terms of the instability in economy during his administration. Even though there were economic team around, but still issues got worse in terms of the economic situation in Nigeria, in terms of education. But for young people, and I will say one of the achievements that young people will get from his administration is from the Not Too Young to Run bill that reduce the age of young people to aspire for leadership and to be part of leadership, which up till now young people are finding it difficult to get into leadership because of how expensive even to run for election has come to be. So looking at the two scenarios, Geoffrey, that the presidency and even as an individual of the president, and again, looking as an individual of the president, he was able to look at and fetch out people that he supposedly assumed they will help him run the administration. And you will now find out that at the end of the day, the issue of anti-corruption, the perception that we all held him on high esteem, that as a man of integrity, fighting corruption, ensuring transparency, you will find out today some of the people that were part of his administration are today facing one or two anti-corruption issues. So it shows that the trust that he bestowed on even some of his appointees to help him run government, the trust was betrayed by them. That today the issue of corruption in Nigeria has worsened. The issue of transparency in Nigeria has worsened, despite the single treasury account that he initiated to ensure transparency. So mixed feeling in two ways. Monitoring and evaluation of his appointees then was a very big challenge of him, knowing very well that he had trusted them with power to help him run the administration.
Okay, Honorable Dachong, if I may come in.
Yeah.
My apologies, because of time. If I may come in, let's bring in Mr. Lukman. You've even gone ahead to look at some of the things we will talk about in terms of sector, because at the end of the day, former President Muhammadu Buhari is dead. He's been buried. All that is left is how he impacted our lives, whether positively or negatively. That is all that is left in terms of his legacy. Mr. Lukman, let's come to you. Similar question to what I asked Honorable Dachong, and this time, people that are close to him. You served as APC National Vice Chairman, Northwest, which is his region where he comes from. So my assumption is that you know him to some extent. I don't know to what extent. But people that are very close to him will say he was a great person. He was jovial. He was a man of integrity. But was he a great president?
Well, I think it will be quite unfair to ask whether he's a great president. One of the things I will prefer to concentrate more on is the politics of former President Buhari. And I think if we want to be fair to him, and now being somebody who is no longer with us, I think we owe it to him to be fair to him. He's certainly a great politician, and in contemporary Nigeria, I won't say in the whole of our history, he stands out as one of those politicians who command a lot of popularity. And his popularity, especially in the northern part of the country, cannot be in any way doubted. And to a large extent, his popularity made it possible for the merger of 2013-2014 to be consummated. I think if you ask me if being a critic, and I have been a critic in terms of the way we manage ourselves in APC, I want to draw lessons in terms of what it is that we can do better. Looking back, I will say that one of the things that we have failed to do is to take advantage of his strength. And interestingly, the paradox of former President Buhari is the fact that his weakness is his own strength. And what are those weaknesses? The weakness is basically that he's somebody who doesn't interfere, allow things to take their natural course. And through that, I will say we were able to succeed to consummate the merger process that produced the APC, largely because that translated into a teamwork. People like Chief Bisi Akande, Asuwaju, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Obonnaya Ono, a lot of them were able to work together, and he subordinated his own, and that is the reality, he subordinated his own personal ambition to become president throughout the period of that merger exercise, which was why even after consummating the merger, he accepted to run for primary. It was through primary he emerged as the candidate of the party. And I think if we are going to draw lessons, which is part of the reason why under the coalition today we keep insisting that people must subordinate their ambition. Now, I think, again, one of the lessons that we must learn is our own collective failure to translate what started as collective work, producing the APC, into post-election reality when we won the election. And that was, what was responsible for that is also the personality of the late President Muhammadu Buhari, because he had such a moral authority, and combining that with legal authority became very difficult to relate with him in terms of moderating him or influencing his conduct. Most people relate with him based on the strategy of trying to win his attention and get favors. And based on that, I think the party got somehow sacrificed. I think we must be very frank to draw lessons from that, and moving forward, if we are not doing coalition and we are hoping to produce government, we must strategize in such a way that from now moving forward up to the time of winning election, the party never gets sacrificed. We must ensure collective leadership run the party, and that should be transmitted into government so that collective leadership run government. If that happens, then we will say that the legacy of former President Buhari, which translate into some of the weaknesses that produce today's reality, are being taken advantage of and utilized to correct and put in place a new era. That will be my assessment.
All right, Honorable Dachong, so today we honor, we remember, but we also assess the man, Muhammadu Buhari, a former president. And for some I've read a couple of things across the social media, from Vox Pop and all of that. Some young persons, their definition and characterization of him perhaps is his handling of EndSARS. Now, the reason why this is raised is because whatever happened with him is a lesson for all of us who are still here. whether you're a political leader, especially those of you who are in politics, in public office, where your decision is quite critical. They've looked at this as a dark spot, and for them, they want to define him by those moments. Would that be a fair assessment of the man?
Well, Geoffrey, you know, it's going to be very difficult for us to differentiate the two, the man in office and the office itself and the operators of the office. And if you, yes, human rights abuses were highly, was in the increase during, from 2015, I wouldn't say till then, till 2023, but even up till now, that before 2015, Nigerians can go on the street and protest. President Goodluck Jonathan was the president that had the highest number of protests that took place in this country, and nothing like that ever happened. So definitely to young people that turned 18 from 2015 and looking up to a better Nigeria, having that hope and being patriotic, and this is a president that had given them hope and assurance. So once the hope has been dashed away, definitely you have such agitation. And with what happened during NSAS, it was an agitation against what has been bedeviling the youth. So the way it ended, the way it now turned out, and the way it was managed, it's still fresh in the minds of a lot of young people that that's what they could be able to gauge and rate the administration of the former president. So it's a history that cannot be erased, Geoffrey, and it's a history that the administration of the late president will forever live with, and it's a history that can only be corrected if human right abuses is being looked into in the current administration. Allow people to have their voice, allow people to say what it is, because as long as you are a leader, you don't have anything to fear. So definitely the NSAS issue is one of the major issues that young people will always mark the administration of the former president low, and at the negative part of it. You can't change the history of what happens during the NSAS, and it's not something that you can be political about it. In as much as the president is late, we honor him, we appreciate him, the sacrifice that he has put himself as an individual before coming into the presidency. But the issue of NSAS, it's something that the truth will remain the truth about what happened in the minds of the young people.
Mr. Dachong, we can even add the issue around Twitter ban. We know how long that took and all the controversy generated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly, because that's why I said the issue of human rights abuse, the issue of journalists being arrested at one point. Today, even there's a journalist in Kaduna that is still nowhere to be found. So those human rights issues are still the negative aspects that will still hit on the former president's administration as an administration. But like my colleague here in the studio have said about his intention as an individual, it's another issue that, yes, it's something that we uphold him on that, but the execution as a government is an issue that we all know that a lot of young people are not pleasant about it as well.
All right, let's look. Okay, yeah. In addition to you coming in, Mr. Lukman, I wanted to add. So you will respond, maybe piggyback from that particular response coming in from Honorable Dachong. But in addition to that, let me add a political variable as well. In calculating the politics of today into the future, especially 2027, Muhammadu Buhari was a significant variable. How will his demise affect that? But you can piggyback on what Honorable Dachong said and you respond to this.
No, I just want to engage the issue of the NSAS issue because I was very active. I was part of government as DG of Progressive Governance. And I have been part of protests in Nigeria in the 80s, you know, at least up to the Save Nigeria group, 2009, 2008, 2009. The challenge with the NSAS, which if we are going to be fair to the administration of former President Buhari, was the fact that it's a protest without leadership, without recognizable leadership. And it threw up a bigger challenge about engaging the people who organize the protest. And I think it is becoming almost like a new tradition or new protest culture in Nigeria. Even the last End Bad Governance protest didn't have recognizable leadership. And the challenge with that is that at the critical moment, every protest reaches a stage when there has to be some form of interface to negotiate the demand and get some form of resolution. Now, with respect to the NSAS, I think that is where the dilemma came up, and the regime, no doubt, it could have been handled better, no doubt about it. But I think we need to recognize that, and an assessment of that also need to acknowledge that on the part of organizers of the NSAS protest, they also have very, very challenging, if you ask me, also problematic strategy in terms of organizing the protest. Having said that, coming to the point you raised about the challenge moving into 2027, but look, that is why I started before by saying that former President Buhari is about, in contemporary Nigerian politics, one of the most remarkable political figures. For us, I mean, in the North, many people, I have not been part of his political party until we met in APC. I was never in ANPP, I was never in CPC for my own reason. But I am aware, being somebody from the North, I know that many politicians look forward to him raising their hands and endorsing them. That translates almost into victory in many places in the North. And that, in a way, made politicians to be lazy. Most people who aspire for position, instead of going to negotiate good relationship with citizens so that that good relationship translates into votes, concentrate more in terms of being in his good books. Now, we don't have any figure like that, which is why today I am one of those in the coalition who keep raising the point. Leaders of the coalition must remember we don't have somebody, a figure like late President Buhari, who, when he raises your hand, it translates into victory. What that means is that politicians must be humble and begin to engage citizens with more listening ears and disposition when they promise and win election to begin to meet expectations of citizens. To a large extent, I will say that is very weak now in Nigerian politics. And we have to work hard. The challenge of having somebody like late President Buhari now absent in Nigerian politics is that politicians must realize, especially those who want to contest election, if they are to win election, except if they want to rig, they must be humble and relate to citizens with higher level of humility rather than the current arrogance. You know, there is an air of arrogance around so-called political leaders, almost to the extent that they behave, which is why we easily produce what I call emperors.
Mr. Lukman, because of time.
In election.
My apologies, we've got time. Apparently, you have just said that the variables will change. Now there is no central rallying figure, at least to the best of our knowledge.
Definitely.
So now everybody on your own, go do the homework. And on the part of the young people not having a leader, perhaps without making excuses for them, that is even their strategy, so that they will not be infiltrated. Whether that strategy worked out or not is out to the jury to judge. But in 30 seconds, Mr. Dachong, your last take on the dynamics of his death in northern politics. 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, well, definitely it will change. About the young people not having a leader, even from the comment, is that if you check the obedient movement, you couldn't hold anybody responsible, and they were very, very successful. So yes, that's a strategy by the young people, and the young people now are getting involved. 2027, that dynamics will definitely change. So the politics in 2027. Any politician that will seem or look at it that will be according to what they want and how they want, the young people are analyzing, they are very wise, they are intelligent, and they are ready.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming through at that short notice. Dachong Bagos is a former member of the House of Representatives from Plateau State. Saliu Lukman is a former national vice chairman, Northwest of the APC, now a member of the ADC, the coalition. Gentlemen, thank you. I really appreciate your coming on the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we're still talking the state of the nation. And of course, we understand that the Patriots will be having their meeting or summit, as it will, talking about a new constitution, a new direction for Nigeria in terms of policy, in terms of the law and the framework of our ground norm. The People's Constitution, as they would like to refer to it. We'll have that conversation, as well as other things around the economy. Join us again. Welcome back. Some eminent Nigerians, elder statesmen, called the Patriots, are coming together to review the state of our union and put forward proposals that should be considered, in their view, for national advancement. As a matter of fact, I read a document that was released by SAN Olusegun, I think on the 5th of June, ahead of June 12, where, if I want to paraphrase what he said, believing that without governance reform, the economic reforms that has been put in place by any administration may not be able, in fact, will not succeed, emphatically, because of structural issues, and all of that is captured in the Constitution that needs to change. That's what the Patriot, perhaps, really all about. But the person who is going to expound this conversation is Zaka Bala, is a member of the Patriot and an economic expert, joins us from Abuja studio. Mr. Bala, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you, and I greet our viewers across the globe.
Mr. Bala, I think the fair place to start before we deep dive into what the Patriots are doing in the meeting or summit, as it is called, which was shifted from today to tomorrow, I understand, in honor of the late President Muhammadu Buhari, is maybe your reflection on Muhammadu Buhari. Have you ever met him, or you just know him by reputation? What do you have to say about Buhari, the former president?
Well, thank you very much, and that's really what I even want to talk, because on the Patriots, like you rightly said, we have our leaders, and the chairman is Chief Emeka Anyaoku. He has been speaking, and I think I will even leave that to my leaders. As far as I'm concerned, former President Muhammadu Buhari has graduated into immortality today. My condolences to his immediate family, the people of Katsina State, Nigerians, ECOWAS, and the continent of Africa. So if anybody wants to x-ray Buhari, to me, Buhari had interesting chapters, he had interesting faces, and he even had interesting chronologies. That's the way I will put it. And I have my own chapters, faces, and chronologies. First of all, I grew up in Maiduguri. I had my primary school and secondary school education in Borno State. In my days in primary school, I remember what happened during the Maitatsine riot, and the role that then young officer Muhammadu Buhari did. Then I was also in secondary school in Borno State, and I went to a secondary school in Borno State where Muhammadu Buhari was a military administrator. I think he visited my secondary school before I went in there, but his successor, Idi Agbon, also visited my secondary school, government secondary school as Uba Borno State then. And what he did to students who were not ready to learn, including cripples, because then our principal just said some students, the final year, then we had class 5, were not willing to learn. And I remember what late Idi Agbon did. They were seriously punished. Then when you fast forward that, to my undergraduate days, I entered University of Port Harcourt in 1983. And in December, when he became a head of state, I don't want to call it subsidy, but they stopped feeding of undergraduates. So I was there. We rioted, and I participated. In fact, I have this car here. I still remember it. They stopped our feeding, and we remember how principled he was. I remember very, very well how principled they were in terms of instilling discipline and the rest. Then when you fast forward and get into politics, I think as far as I'm concerned, personally, I may be wrong. That was why I said it depends on who you're talking to and the perspectives. As far as I'm concerned, former President Muhammadu Buhari actually had his principles, tainted when he probably got into politics. But from the background as a military man, I think he was straitjacketed. But something tells me something told me that probably when he, during his foray into politics, he probably came across zigzag characters. He probably came across people I can best describe as economic vampires, economic betrayers, and people who are not straightforward. And when you move further and graduate again, I can tell you about some of the policies and fiscal policies. I'm a practicing petroleum engineer, so I knew what happened in the days of subsidy removal. I felt very, very bad because a lot of people, it was during his time, but I noticed it happens with all presidents. Somehow it's strange, Before they become presidents, I don't know how they get it in Nigeria, they get propagandists, very good propagandists who can convolute anything.
All right, Mr. Bala, if I come in.
The concept of subsidy, which is supposed to be a global concept, was adulterated. It was given a different coloration.
All right, Mr. Bala, if I come in,
but I was also happy that just before he left office, certain things happened that gave a hint to the succeeding government. And to me, like I said, it depends. And in each of these sectors...
All right, Mr. Bala, let me come in. Let me just come in and throw in a question or two. From your understanding of the economy and all of that, which is where some persons scored him quite low, given the fact that, especially the fiscal management of the economy, given where this government picked up from the numbers that were presented to all of us. We had a conversation with the top economists in the country who had worked with him as somebody in a committee that were making a recommendation in terms of advisory. And perhaps one of the remarks he made is the fact that he had a bit of phobia for reform, so he ended up kicking the can down the road in that sense because he was a bit more welfarist in the outlook. He didn't want to hurt the people. Do you think that was also part of the problem of his ability to revamp the economy that he had promised to revamp? Because in just the general assessment, if I ask you about the Patriots that we talked about.
No. As far as I'm concerned, he was misled. If you look at his background, he was a principled person. And that was why I said everything about his principle got adulterated. And to be honest, in politics, you have characters that are zigzagged. You have propagandists. In the military, you don't have propagandists. But in politics, you have propagandists. They just tell you how they want it done. They will even guide you, but at the end, they are going to mislead you. I'm saying this because I'm also a chartered accountant. I know what it means. I know what subsidy is. But in Nigeria, the concept of subsidy was abused because it's a global concept. Subsidy is a globally accepted, a globally tested, and a universally accepted concept. It is an economic pain cushioning concept. So if subsidy is not working in your country, that will not invalidate or vitiate its global universality. You have to look at how it was practiced in your own country. But in the concept of Nigeria, it was abused. Because what we had during his time, and I will explain it, was you had subsidy here, you have Nigeria here, but you have government here and you have Nigerians here. But between Nigerians and between our government and the citizens, you have what I can best describe as the subsidy that should get to Nigerians and the saboteurs. But what happened was, instead of removing the subsidy, the saboteurs, the economic vampires, the economic betrayers, and those economic, satanic guys, it was the subsidy that was removed, and we saw it. But I said I was very happy because a chronology was set for the succeeding government, and it was very clear. We noticed that when subsidy was first removed on kerosene, we didn't see the positive effect. Then the next thing was, and I love it because it was done in stages, and that is how you learn. If something has been done in stages by your predecessor, it should give you a hint. Subsidy was removed first on kerosene. We didn't see the effect. So it was clear that it was the mismanagement of the concept that was the issue. It was later removed on diesel. We didn't see the effect. It was removed on aviation fuel. So the only thing that was remaining was on PMS. For people like me, as a practicing petroleum engineer and a chartered accountant, it was clear that we had economic betrayers. We had saboteurs. It wasn't the concept, but it was the management of the concept that was the issue. But unfortunately, when the final one was removed and we saw it, it was very clear that the economy was going to reach the cliff edge and possibly collapse into the valley. And we have not recovered till now.
All right, Mr. Zaka, almost totally out of time, but in our landing thought, I know you're not like a spokesperson of the Patriots, but the conversation the Patriots will be having is of national importance, and they've been having this conversation.
Correct.
They even had to meet with the president at some point last year or so. The president has said, it's a great idea you're coming up with, but right now my priority, I just came into government, I want to get this economy on the road. I'm sure after the summit, the Patriots will be meeting him again. Now that we are talking about a new constitution in that sense, Lisa Bakoba, the SAN said, our constitution is not an act, it's a schedule attached to an act, that the National Assembly should pass through Section 4, subsection 2 and 4, and detach it and attach a new law. That's his own escape routine to all of that. But besides all of that, Section 16 of our constitution tilts towards welfareism in that sense, when in terms of state economic policy. So is the Patriot one of the things they'll be considering as a new economy, a new constitution rather? Would they be factoring in a two-pronged approach to managing the economy, capitalist or neoliberal and welfarist, or just stay with the nuances of the Section 16 of the Constitution? That's just a technical question for us to wrap up.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the Patriots are meeting to make sure the constitution we are going to have or clean up and come up with is a constitution that will encourage inclusivity. We want an integrated government. We don't want a government that will be springing up monsters. We don't want a government that will be springing up leaders or throwing up leaders that will be egocentric. We want a situation where if for any reason you are a politician, I'm a politician, and we are supposed to be councillors, and you defeat me, if you feel I have something to contribute, bring me in, regardless of whether I was an opposition guy or not. So for the Patriots, what they want, we want to see a Nigeria that is working. Remember, Nigeria used to be the continental hub for the continent of Africa. People were learning democracy from us, education from us, till today. Look at what is happening about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Are you hearing anything about Nigeria again? Nigeria used to lead when you talk about diplomacy, even when you talk about helping other countries, you know, to quell things like insurgencies and the rest. So everything about the Patriots is to just make sure we have an inclusive government.
Okay.
We want a government that will make sure it brings leaders, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of regardless of even tribal or sectarian affiliation.
All right,
we
Mr.
want
Bala.
Nigeria to come back to her position and be well reckoned with within the continent of Africa and within the global community.
Zaka Bala, we must thank you so much, and we're looking out for the recommendation or the report of the Patriots this time and see how it goes from there. Zaka Bala is a chartered accountant, also a petroleum engineer and economist. Thank you so much for your perspective. We wish you and the Patriots the very best.
Thank you, and condolences to Nigeria again.
Absolutely. Our thoughts as well are with the Buhari family, who are having a very tough time right now, trying to grasp the moment they now have to live with for the rest of their life. Our condolences are with the family of the Buharis. And that's it on the program. Shehu Kimbale will be right here tomorrow. Thanks for your time and company. Good night.